She freaked out, but I just told her I was in a dark place. 6 shocking confessions from Reddit. I'm secretly mad at my niece for having a mental health breakdown at my son's birthday party. I know this sounds bad, and I know I'm being selfish, but I'm irritated at her for what she did. I threw my son a birthday party yesterday. I've had my niece for 2 days at this point. She, 14, hasn't said anything to me, her sister, her brother, my mother, my father, anyone about anything bad going on. My boyfriend and his 2 kids, around her age, and some other people come over. My niece, as soon as his son sits down, flings herself on the couch and starts silently crying. My boyfriend and his kids go outside, and she follows them. I'm busy running around doing stuff and don't notice this taking place. Finally my boyfriend comes in and mentions my niece is outside laying some pretty heavy stuff on his kids, who she barely met, and he better go back outside. I had no idea this was happening or what or why. So I tell my mother to get my niece and take her to my room and see what the heck was going on. The party resumes and boyfriend pulls me aside and says niece was telling them about how her dad ignores her and all this other stuff, and he didn't know what to say because he barely met her. Part of me is wondering if she was just trying to get attention from the son, who she had seen pictures of and claimed was really cute. She didn't start anything even remotely like this until he got there. After they left, she was fine. I just feel like she was trying to make a scene. Her mother, my older sister, was like that. She'd get dramatic when there was a family gathering. I know my niece has mental health issues, as her mother did, so I am almost excusing the situation, but she put those 3 people in a really awkward position pretty early on into the party. Worth noting, my sister left her children when they were babies, so that's why she isn't in the story. To the manager of Wendy's who is freaking out and has no idea what happened this afternoon, I'm sorry. To the manager of Wendy's, I'm sorry sir, and I owe you a bit of a story. My name is Chris, and I'm the hurricane that came through your store this afternoon. So here's the parts you didn't know. I live about an hour away from you, and pass your store on my way to one of our sites. I'm an engineer for a series of power plants, and things at the plant are a little nuts right now, because we're putting the whole thing back together at the moment after some major repairs. That's what happens when a drunk drives a car into the intake of a power plant. He lived, the turbine didn't. For the past 3 years I've been being ground to dust under the cogs of the federal court system, and am almost crushed small enough to fall out the other side. My sentencing is about a week away, and while I would say I'm at the lowest point of my entire life, I thought that 3 years ago, and yet that bar has moved consistently lower on a regular basis ever since. I am as emotionally shattered as I've ever been, and it's been a rough week. I don't eat much, and I get punished when I do. After an hour in the car, a pit stop wasn't an option and I stopped into your place. It's been my safe haven a couple times in the past. You have an excellent bathroom. It's always clean and seldom used, and that works just fine for me. While I may have had a vicious, miserable experience at the doing of my own body, the good side is, it's at least quick. A physical wreck, late for work, and with my brain pretty much tapioca at this point from being terrified non-stop, I accidentally forgot my phone and left it in your bathroom. I made it all the way to work before I noticed. As I was about to drop into the pit, hanging from my harness, I reached for my phone to play some music in my earbuds, and knew instantly where it was. About 20 miles and 2 towns up the road. I took off my harness, changed from my Carhartts to my coat, and briskly made the drive all the way back to Wendy's. I ran inside, my phone wasn't in the bathroom. My heart sank. My phone is a couple years old, but it's a high-end model. I'm a nerd and a professional YouTuber. I teach people about science and engineering, so I have a phone with considerable horsepower for work. I also have a good lawyer that I'm in frequent communication with, and losing my phone a week before sentencing would be a monumental pain in an already horrible week. I'm up against an impossible deadline at the plant and couldn't put that off to solve this. I had no way to communicate to get help with replacing it. I was completely messed up. The bar inches ever lower. With my last shred of optimism, I walked quietly up to the counter. They were busy on the drive-through and I told the polite gentleman to take his time. I can wait. He came to the register only a moment later, and as he started to type I told him that I didn't need an order, I was looking for my phone. His face lit up like a Christmas tree, and with it, my heart. He called for the manager, "You, sir," and you appeared almost instantly with a smile and my phone. It hit me like a truck. Some random man, whom I will likely never get to properly thank, found my phone and brought it to the counter. He didn't pocket it to eBay for several $100. He did the right thing. Your entire staff acted honorably. Any one of them could have had the chance to pocket that expensive bit of electronics, but everyone did the right thing. I know it sounds stupid, but I've had 3 years of the entire world taking bites out of my ass on a daily basis. Trust in the general goodness of humanity is something of a cornerstone in my belief system, but it's not something I've been gifted the experience of receiving at all, except for the very small circle of people whom I call friends. The cascading acts of cooperative random kindness and goodness of people I'd never met before was just the final straw for a guy like me who only has the most basic box of crayons to express emotions. And that, sir, is why I asked you how many people were on shift at that moment. That's why I pulled the emergency $100 bill that was hidden inside my phone case. It's been there since I got the phone. I've kept one there since a night well over a decade ago when I needed $100 to get my car back from being towed because I'm an idiot. It's why I pulled the money from my wallet as well, and gave a $20 tip to every person on your crew at that moment. Because it was all I could do. I teach my students to do the best you can, with what you have, where you are, and that's the best I could do to express the sheer overwhelming thankfulness I had for you saving my day. I know that in the grand scheme of things it's a trivial little act of kindness. It's just a stupid phone. But sir, I reached the end of my rope 2 days ago with the latest piece of paper handed down from the prosecution. When they say the United States versus Chris, they really make it feel that way. The entire country is standing on my head and has been for years. Thank you, sir, and thank you to your staff and the random man who found my phone and was conscientious enough to hand it in. I do not begin to have the vocabulary or emotional wherewithal to express my gratitude for your help today. I didn't then either, which is why I dashed out of there so quickly. On February 16, 2022 at roughly 1:45 p.m., I hit rock bottom, so far? In a Wendy's parking lot, and sat there and cried my eyes out with complete abandon until I could see well enough to drive. All because some nice guy returned my phone. A trivial task in his busy day, and a moment I'll never forget. You never know what that random person you meet is going through. Every one of us is consumed, fighting invisible demons that we keep to ourselves. Be kind to strangers. My father, who was a deadbeat, died and left me half of his money. So I was raised by my mom. My parents got divorced when I was 3 years old because my father was using substances at the time. My mom went to Taiwan, brought him back and got him clean, but he went back on it. So my mom left him. I literally saw him less than 10 times my whole life. He never supported us, no child support, nothing. I used to get in trouble in school, stealing and whatnot. When my mom got fed up with me, she would call him and he would come and try to discipline me like he was a good dad or something. I had nothing but pure hatred for him. Once, when I was 7, he tried to come see me but I wouldn't open the door for him. I told him to fuck off, and that I have no father, I don't know who he is. For then on, I never heard from him again. Although my mom did keep contact with him. 5 years ago, he passed in a car crash, DUI. That's when my dad's side family contacted me for his funeral. I didn't want to go. But my mom talked me into it. At the funeral, I met my 2 half-sisters, a half-brother, and his new wife. Apparently that asshole became very rich and in his will he left me half of everything he got. His wife wasn't happy about that. She was trying to take everything for herself. So I had to sue her. Just the lawyer's fees burned up all of my savings. I won the case, she appealed and I won again. Last week, I finally received everything that he left me. Now I don't ever have to work again if I don't want to. And if I play my cards right, my kids won't have to either. I don't know how I feel about this. I appreciate the money, but that didn't change how I feel about him. He is still an asshole, I still fucking hate him. Thanks for listening, I just needed to get this off my chest. I, 13 years old, female, despise my mother and sent her boyfriend to jail. My grandmother raised me and my sister, as my mother has been hooked on substances since she was my age, only stopping when she was pregnant with me and my sister. The oldest memories I have of my mother are of her being neglectful and abusive towards me and my oldest sister. We do have good memories, but half the time she was doped out, high, or drunk during them. My father died when I was young. Since then my mother has been collecting his death benefits, solely using them for her own wants and needs. My mother has also never worked a day in her life. She lived with my grandmother for 90% of her life, and still leeches off of her, as the only source of income she has are my father's death benefits, which is barely enough for someone to pay rent, and food stamps. My whole life my mother has always chosen drugs and her boyfriends over me and my sister. Just recently my mother's marriage fell out, thank God, because he was an asshole, and since then she decided to stay with us for a while. This did not sit well with any of us, as I cannot be in a room with my mother for more than 10 minutes without starting an argument, and my sister isolates in her room as she prefers to not interact with her. But since she's my grandmother's daughter, my grandmother agreed to let her stay with us. In that time period that she stayed with us, my mother had many boyfriends. My sister, grandmother and I all hate her boyfriends. Why can't you just be single and focus on your kids for once? My grandmother has asked. What, so you just expect me not to be happy? Has always been my mother's reply. Most of my mother's boyfriends have been drug addicts and bums. All of my mother's boyfriends make me and my sister extremely uncomfortable. For the past year every man that my mother has mentioned to me, or brought around me, I do a really quick and easy mini background search on them. I've learned that if an adult has a record, you can easily look up their full name and where they live on Google, and likely their records and mug shots will come up. Well, my mother got this new boyfriend, Daniel, that she met online and she absolutely adores him. Daniel also does not work, and he is homeless. She would bring him to my grandmother's apartment all the time and does anything for him. She buys him clothes, hats, urnices, shoes. Anything he wants, or anything she thinks he'll like, she'll get for him. All they did was sit on their lazy asses, occupy our small living room, eat our food, get drunk, be noisy, and make messes, which me, my sister and grandmother had to clean up. My mother does not help us financially. While we struggle every month and barely have any clothes, all she does is keep herself and her boyfriend happy and occupied, and abuse my grandmother's hospitality. Now, you may be wondering why my grandmother never kicked my mother out. That is simply because if she did then all hell would break loose. Every time we try to talk my mother into changing her ways, or doing something that she doesn't like, that's how things go. People don't change unless they want to change. People don't get help unless they want to get help. My mother refuses to change. She also claims that she is sober, substance-wise, and has been for years. But I know that's a complete lie, as I am familiar with substances and what someone is like when they're using. Well, eventually I did a mini background search on Daniel, and turns out that he is a sex offender. I also found out that Daniel is on probation, and is violating his parole by staying at my grandmother's for weeks on end. When I brought this up to my mother, I only brought up the fact that he was a sex offender, not that I knew he was on probation. She admitted that she knew and proceeded to get mad at me for not minding my business and invading someone's privacy, even though his record is literally public for everyone and anyone to see. After finding that out, I refused to be in the same house as Daniel and be uncomfortable in my own home. This led to a very heated argument between me and my mother. Ultimately her and Daniel moved into her car for a short period of time. Later on my mother and Daniel moved in with a friend and began couch hopping between their friend's house and my grandmother's house. Him being around me still made me very uncomfortable, but I was done arguing as there was no point. I am just a child, therefore I have no power. Later on, I guess it was ooh. It's time to switch and stay at mum's house time of the month for my mother and Daniel. After a while my grandmother got tired of their bullshit and secretly made an appointment with DHS, Department of Human Services, to see what she would need to do to get custody of us and receive my father's death benefits. Me, my grandmother and sister went in to talk to this guy, IDK what his title is, so I'm just call him an investigator, and mid-talk I remembered that Daniel was still staying with us, violating his probation. When I brought up how I didn't like my mother's new boyfriend, the topic instantly switched to him. It was like fucking Christmas, but in April. When I said Daniel's name, the investigator's face lit up like a Christmas tree. Instantly, Daniel's parole officer was notified. Eventually we got the call from my mother that someone had snitched on Daniel, and that he was back in jail. It was fucking amazing. My mum still doesn't know it was me who snitched, and I think it's hilarious. Every time I see her I want to laugh in her face about how stupid her and her boyfriend are. That's my confession, I guess. I dumped my girlfriend because of her friends, not because of anything she did. I've been with my girlfriend for just over a year and overall she's a nice person, but her friends are absolutely cancerous. The main ringleader has a kid and muscled her long-term boyfriend into an open relationship. She parties several times a week and fucks other dudes whilst the pathetic wormy doormat of a boyfriend looks after their 2-year-old. The other one routinely cheats on her fiancé and even fucked one of my brothers in a bathroom stall the first time my friends and my girlfriend's friends hung out. They've pushed her into posting photos online and all sorts of other grotesque things, but my girlfriend justifiably tells them to kick rocks because she's in a relationship. This only results in them throwing controlling boyfriend accusations my way. My girlfriend's last 2 boyfriends were complete deadbeats, one of whom was a recovering addict, so this is the only normal relationship she's been in for the past 5 years. I knew it was only be a matter of time before she caved. You can't be around serial cheaters and dirtbags without dabbling with it yourself at some point. And I can't exactly tell her to cut off her childhood friends without some sort of resentment festering, so I did us both a favor and ended the relationship. She freaked out, but I just told her I was in a dark place, and couldn't be in a relationship. I didn't have it in me to tell her it was because her friends are actual human toilets. My biological father just destroyed my childhood dreams. I'm a 20-year-old guy who grew up without my bio dad, 41, in my life. I have no memories of him being married to my mom, and until last week I'd never met him. I used to ask my mom why he never called or tried to visit, and she'd always say he loves you so much and wishes he could be here but he can't. I'd ask her why they split up and she'd say, "Your dad is a great man but we were young and it didn't work." It's nobody's fault. All my life, I was fed a lot of positive stuff about him and always had a dream of meeting him and just hanging out. Maybe we'd go fishing or catch a Niners game or just have a beer together. When I graduated from high school I kept hoping that he'd come to my ceremony, but of course, it was 2020 and I didn't have one, so I used that as an excuse for him not reaching out. 2 weeks ago he contacted my mom and said he wanted to meet me. I was happy and nervous and emotional all at once. I legit cried in my room because it felt like all my dreams were coming true and I'd finally get to meet my dad. He came by on Sunday and my mom stayed with us for about 30 minutes, then she left the house to give us some time alone. He asked if I was dating anyone and I said I'm not. Then he asked if I'd ever had a girlfriend and I said no. Then he said, "Boyfriend?" And I kind of blushed because I'm gay but not out of the closet to anyone. He kind of picked up on it and waved me off and said, "It's all good." I relaxed and the rest of the visit was good. We talked about life and my job, then we made plans to hang out again this weekend. I've been a nervous wreck all week thinking about what we'll talk about, if I should ask him why he stayed away or if I should just leave it alone. Last night he sent me explicit photos. I immediately sent him a text telling him he was sending them to the wrong person, and he texted me another photo and a bunch of texts telling me it wasn't a mistake. I'm absolutely destroyed right now. I feel gross and worthless. All the memories of me laying in bed telling myself that one day my dad would come back to me and we'd be close are ruined. Everything I ever hoped and dreamed about is dead. I blocked him on everything. Today he sent my mom a text saying he wouldn't be able to see me this weekend. I'm so humiliated that I can't bring myself to tell her the truth. I hope you enjoyed these stories. Let me know what you thought of them in the comments below, and I hope you join me next time for more.